will by the word of Jehovah. His will by the will of the Lord. His will by divine right. His will calling us home. His will by divine right. Our God is calling us home.
Shalom. Hello again. This is a very special program because it deals with the heart of the issue raised by the statement, Israel by divine right. Is Israel there because of God's will, by divine right? Or is it just a political entity voted on by the United Nations and to be judged as a political entity? Do they behave well? Do they treat people well? This sort of thing. Well, I don't know. We're going to cover some rather surprising developments in this program about people denying Israel and therefore cursing the Jews. I think that to criticize or defame Israel or to say conceivably these people might be driven off their land is exactly the same thing as just cursing the Jews. You cannot like Jews very well if you deny them a homeland. The things that happen to people in this world without a homeland are to be deplored. The Kurds, or I don't know, the Somalians in a way, deprived of their land by crooked government, by gangs. The people in Yugoslavia, one group trying to drive another off. Excuse my cold. I barely able to make a program, but I wanted to get this one on the air. God said in Genesis 12:3, I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. I never tire of repeating it. Seminary professors need to hear it, on down to Sunday school students. God is not mocked. He cursed our country in full because of our cursing Israel last year and this year, and it will go on if we go on cursing Israel. Now, I expect anti-Semitism from the unbelievers. I've said that before. That's prophesied. Matthew 24:9, ye shall be hated of all nations, Jesus told his Israelite disciples. But we're getting anti-Semitism from some Christians, and it breaks my heart. I've talked about it before. Some Christian magazines, some certain mainline denominations, some seminaries even. It's rampant in the Middle East. In the Middle East are certain churches that, I don't want to steal the thunder from our next interview, but I want you to watch this and listen closely. On October 4th, during our Feast of Tabernacles tour, an editorial ran in the Jerusalem Post that just stood me up straight. I have never read such a thing. I never imagined such a thing. We were so shocked, our crew, that we called the Post. We asked for permission to go down there with our cameras, interview the writer, and ask him, could he back up what he said? Is the evidence there? What he said was so stunning. We did that. He cooperated with us, and we had quite an interview, and I learned what cursing Israel can come to. Let me introduce to you a wonderful man, the writer David Bar-Illan. You start, it's hardly surprising that Jerusalem's Anglican bishop, Samir Katifi, has decided to co-sponsor with a world Islamic organization a conference on the situation of Christians in this country. The move is consistent with the local church's growing involvement in the political drive for a Palestinian state.
Right. The churches have become activists politically, and I explained that at least partly. The explanation lies in the fact that they are threatened. They are afraid for their lives. Christians, the Arab Christians in this country, are a small minority, and it's getting smaller. And the reason it's getting smaller, they started leaving the countries when the Jordanians occupied what they call the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria, and of course had control over the holy places in Jerusalem. And they did all sorts of things to make the Christians feel unwanted and as a persecuted minority. As such, they've taken on the coloration of their oppressors, the ones who tried to push them out. And that is why I think they are collaborating today. They are really afraid for their lives, and there have been many cases in which that fear was justified by the actions of the Intifada activists, as they are known, the terrorists who belong to the PLO or to the Hamas, to the Islamic fundamentalists.
I'll have to say that I am shocked at Christians being intimidated, falling back before threats.
Even the Pope, I don't know if you remember that, but during the Gulf crisis, the Pope actually came out for Saddam Hussein. He mentioned Saddam Hussein favorably in speeches 38 times and condemned the war against him, condemned the coalition against him. That was partly, again, because of the interests that the Christian churches, the established Christian churches, have in the Arab world. They have a lot of Arabs who are Christian in the Arab world. They are a small minority and they're persecuted. What I invade against, and I feel is absolutely horrible, is the fact that even those very established and powerful churches never condemned massacres of Christians in Arab countries because of this, because they're afraid that worse will happen if they do so. For instance, in Lebanon, Christians have been massacred right and left, as you know, now for 15, 20 years. In the Sudan, Christians are being annihilated, wiped out. And in many other places, in Egypt, the Copts are being persecuted and killed by Islamic fundamentalists. The police are doing very little about it. And the Christian churches, the established churches, are not protesting, are not saying this is wrong, this is terrible, and trying to get the Arab governments to do something about it.
But Christians are Christians because they read the Old Testament. The Old Testament tells us that the Messiah is a Jew.
Yes, and that is perhaps the greatest crime being committed here. In order to prove that they preceded the Jews in this country, the Arabs are now claiming that the Palestinians are really the descendants of an ancient people that used to live here, like the Philistines, the Canaanites. They're also claiming the Christian Arabs, again under the pressure of the PLO and the fundamentalist Islam, are claiming ancestry to the followers of Jesus Christ, which of course makes it absolutely ridiculous, because as we all know, not only was Jesus a Jew, he was born in Bethlehem in Judea, as it says in the Old Testament, in the New Testament. And as you probably know, Palestine is never mentioned in the New Testament.
Well, nevertheless, he was born 6 centuries before Muhammad was born.
Before Muhammad
how could they go back to somebody before their...
That is how absurd it is. It is absolutely ridiculous. And nevertheless, they push the line in the hope that what Hitler and Goebbels used to say, that if you repeat a lie often enough, and if it's big enough, and you repeat it often enough, it will be accepted as the truth. They keep referring to Jesus as a Palestinian. They refer to Peter as a Palestinian. They refer to the early Christians as the ancestors of the present Arab population of this country. Of course, it makes it absolutely ridiculous. And nevertheless, these repetitions are effective. Even reference books today refer to this country as Palestine in the time of Christ, which of course is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it wasn't Palestine, it was Israel, it was Judea.
As you wrote here, the campaign began a decade or so ago when the PLO embarked on an attempt, I love this, to de-Judaize Jesus and Palestinize him.
Right. That's exactly what's been happening. And
change Jesus Christ to an Arab.
Right, an Arab, a Palestinian, a whatever. And the strangest thing is to claim that the Arabs of this country, most of whom, by the way, arrived here less than a century ago as a result of the Zionist movement, which created working places.
It was the Jews who made the Arabs come.
But even those who had lived in this country for a long time cannot obviously trace their ancestry to the Jews who followed Jesus 2,000 years ago.
The whole thing is absolutely shocking. Of course, David's referring to the 4 or 5 established churches represented around the holy sites of Israel. He doesn't mean every church in the world, and certainly not. Does every denomination side with Muslims against Jews and so on? Most have no interest in it. Still in all, the very idea that people, even Christian in name, could team up with pagans against the brethren of the Lord was amazing to me. While we were at the Post, publisher Yehuda Levy, who has been on our program before and is a very enlightened individual, hero of several wars and so on, came by, and we talked to him about this term Palestinian. I'm one of the people that was kind of taken in to some degree. When the Arabs call themselves Palestinians, I shrug and say, well, okay. But I didn't realize that in my lifetime, within my years, the Palestinians were once all Jews.
Well, you're right. Unfortunately, I must say that there is a lot of confusion and ignorance in almost in every respect to the term Palestinians, Palestine, etc. People do not know, or those who knew maybe like to forget, that Palestine is a relatively new invention made by the British in 1919, when they called this part of their mandate granted by the League of Nations at that time to the British government. They called it Palestine in order not to upset the Jews who lived here or the Arabs who lived in this part of the world.
Indeed, the Jerusalem Post until 1950 was called the Palestine Post, the name still found on a plaque at the entrance to the Post headquarters. Yehuda recalls that he was a Palestinian until Israel became a state in 1948. The term Palestinian, he remembers, really became popular after the Six-Day War.
When the PLO, maybe smartly on their part, picked up the name Palestine and Arabized it in a way that in the eyes and in the minds of many people in the world now, Palestinians and Palestine is all Arabic, Islamic, and is opposing to Jewish and to the new state of Israel. You just mentioned yourself the name of the newspaper was the Palestine Post, and every institution between 1919 and 1948 was somehow incorporated the name Palestine in it.
In the Dallas Morning News, for which I recently contributed a column about Israel, a Palestinian writer said that the village of Silwan, a little town in East Jerusalem, had been a Palestinian village since antiquity. Does that have meaning? Or?
The danger is, unfortunately, that when you have such a propaganda going on consistently for decades, and it's already almost 3 decades that the PLO is very consistent with this kind of propaganda and slogans, it gets some success, no doubt, in the minds and eyes of many people, especially in North America. I've seen this all over, maybe including politicians who make decisions regarding Israel and Arabs and Palestine, and Palestinians, etc., all based on a big fraud, really.
Fraud is the right word for what goes on a lot of the time in the Middle East. It is a fraud that the Arabs are the underdog and Israel is powerful. Israel has 4 million or so people and the Arabs 200 million. It's a fraud that Palestinians have been in this land for any particular length of time. There's no history, no artifacts, no archaeology shows that. It's a fraud that the Jews don't belong in this part of the world. For heaven's sake, they predate the Arabs by centuries, millennia. It's a fraud that there's some kind of revolution going on that needs a peace conference. This is the biggest fraud of all. In murders this year, I believe New York City will come pretty close to 2,500 and Jerusalem less than 10. I'm not sure where we need a peace conference, but I don't know what's going on out there. You know what fights fraud is funds. Funds fight fraud. That is, if you send money here, for heaven's sake, we can produce programs and we can keep shining a bright light on what is really going on over there. We need to produce these kind of programs throughout 1993 to document the real situation. You are not getting the news. We are being deceived. It isn't even a matter of the newspapermen getting together and saying, let's give Israel a black eye. There's no good reason for it, except that for some reason, Israel, as some kind of marauding power, sells newspapers. Why, I don't know. Why did Jackie Kennedy sell tabloids in the supermarket for 20 years? I don't know. I have no idea why to tell the news this way, to pretend that this young democracy taking in immigrants from so many nations, doing a brave and beautiful job of making a 20th century nation, being picked on by an enormous conglomerate of wealthy and backward nations, dictatorships right and left. Why that one is made the villain, I cannot imagine. Believe me, I wouldn't have to be Jewish to say this. We're being deceived by the media, by the press, by the TV, but this program will not deceive you. You are the very elect, and in Matthew 24:24 it says, if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived. Well, we'll tell you the truth. I do not film these programs with an Israeli bias. If you've watched them, we have had Palestinian journalists on here who had their say. We do not edit what they said. We ask all sides. When we go to a newspaper like the Jerusalem Post, we are talking to intelligent men who have covered this news for decades. They are not lying to you. And we go to all sides of the question. What we need is your support, because we can keep on doing it if you will help us do it. And I hope you will think about that. We can't do it on our own. When you send money in here, I don't take the money. We just make programs with it. My salary hasn't changed since this ministry started. But we are now making more and better programs because of you. Let me go back to David Bar-Illan. Evidently, Muslims climbed the dome of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, unquestionably Christianity's holiest site. They painted a PLO flag, right. And in your view, the church didn't even protest.
No, they didn't protest. They didn't mention it, and they didn't ask it to be be erased because they were so afraid of the terrorists who did it. And as I say, it's very difficult to blame people for being afraid for their lives, but this is a fact, and this happened around the time that everybody was yelling about the Jewish purchasers of a hostel, which was an abandoned pigsty that was bought by a drug addict haven, which was bought by Jews and inhabited by families, and that became a huge furor, as you remember, a couple of years ago, when this was being done to one of the holiest places of Christianity, and nobody protested.
And then there was a remarkable sign on the east side of Jerusalem, which I have here. It was written in Arabic, but it's translated to the German. Sabbat töten wir die Juden, am Sonntag töten wir die Christen. Will you translate that for me?
Yes, on Saturday the Jews will die, on Sunday the Christians will die.
Each on their appropriate Sabbath.
Absolutely, and the usual slogan is first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people.
That's the more gentle
Yeah,
one.
that's the most, here, just in case you misunderstood.
What will happen first,
right.
and so on.
Right. And the funniest thing about this, by the way, that as I don't know if you remember, but the Reverend Tutu, who came from South Africa, and the Archbishop Tutu came from South Africa to lecture Israel of its treatment of the Arabs in this country, and he was standing giving this lecture in Beit Sahur, which is a mostly Christian community, an Arab Christian community not far from Jerusalem, when this graffito was on the wall next to where he was standing, not realizing that the graffito saying we're going to kill the Christians as he was speaking against Israel.
I guess I want to ask you, for heaven's sake, won't the world ever throw off this Islamic menace?
I feel that the world is aware of the danger. It's just that it's treating it the way it treated the danger of Nazism in the 30s. They feel that they can appease it, that they can placate it, that they can be nice to it and thereby somehow vitiate its anger. But it won't work this way, and that is what I think the dangerous thing is. Not the lack of awareness of the danger, but the tactics which are used against it. And what I feel should be done is not only the realization of the danger, but also the very tough stance that has to be taken by the world against it. Otherwise, it will cause the kind of havoc that the totalitarian movements in the 30s caused, and that I'd hate to see.
When you go into churches, you see this growing very dangerously. It's starting with this. It's going on to biblical truths, rewriting history, and then the next step is rewriting the Bible, as it is happening right now in many parts of the United States.
Oh, yes. Jesus is a Palestinian.
Jesus is a Palestinian, and this lady, Hanan Ashrawi, the spokesman of the Palestinian delegation to the peace talks in Washington, she even did not notice what she was saying when she mentioned to prove her roots in the country. She is a Christian, so she claims at least, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. That was as if to prove that Bethlehem was a Palestinian site or a whatever.
Since it's in
and
the
she
West
forgot
Bank.
that in the Bible, Bethlehem was in Judea, in fact, which is a Hebrew name, and Judah was part of the Jewish kingdom, etc., etc.
This is all a lie. It's just a lie. Is it going to succeed?
It may. The fact that it is a lie does not mean that it cannot succeed. It may succeed because, as I said, when it's consistent and persistent for so many years, and ignorance is the source of evil, if you're asking me, and people, not only in the United States, in Europe as well, who know very little, if anything, about the recent history of this part of the world, are taking for granted whatever they hear. And if you're repeating the same lie over and over again for many years, in many places, in writing and orally, eventually there would be so many people who would take it as the truth.
Wherever there are lies, it's just the spirit of the Antichrist. This is a theme of the oncoming tribulation period. Of course, its big lie will be peace on earth, like this peace conference that we're having. It's going to destroy many people, according to Daniel. We've quoted that earlier in the series, Daniel 8:25. By peace shall he destroy many. We can refer to him scripturally. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And verse 11, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. We are seeing lies coming in such gross amounts these days. And frankly, a way to counter this is with a widespread medium like television. We actually, our small group and our small ministry, can counter a lot of lies with our national television program if you help us. Obviously, at a year-end program, we ask for funds. I really need your help, and if you haven't given to us this year, or some people have watched the show for 5 years and not helped us, catch up with me, will you? This is a great time for it. We're making the show every week and giving it to you free and just hoping you'll come through for us. You know, when you go to the movies, they put the booth out front. You have to pay before you see what you get. I wonder how well the movies would make out if you got to make a donation at the end for how you like the picture. That's the way we have to work. And yet we have an important mission. We can counter all this lying and give some truth. And whoever watches us gets this truth. A TV screen full of our truth is just as effective as a TV screen full of their lies. If you'll help us get on the screen with the present-day story, not so we have to run this ministry with reruns all the time, but new productions that cover what's going on, well, the truth will set you free. You know the Scripture. And it'll set others free, more importantly. You who are watching, you're probably a believer. There are people out there that need to get off this sinking ship so bad, and in a way, providing us airtime gives them a place in a lifeboat. Please help us. You know, I go through this litany for you so often. We're in rented offices. I wear a Casio wristwatch, not a Rolex. We don't have waste in this ministry. I'd say that with a laugh because somebody once wrote in, asking if I wore a Rolex. I didn't know what a Rolex was. My $29.95 Casio keeps wonderful time and even keeps people's phone numbers on it. Don't donate a Rolex here because I won't wear it. This ministry only wants to help. Okay, we're not starving here, but we can't buy enough airtime. If I and all the crew forewent all their salaries for a long period of time, it wouldn't buy one program. It's too big, too far-flung. We need your help. So please, we have foregone our salaries in the past to keep these shows on the air. I don't think it's fair. Acts 2:45 says Christians have all things in common. We're to bear one another's burdens. Other ministries have gone off of television, and you know that, especially the small ministries. We are somehow still in there competing, not really competing, but I mean up against the air times of big evangelistic associations and large churches with almost unlimited treasuries. And we depend entirely on you. We really have no reserves, little rainy day money to tide us over, and sometimes we have to pay half of an airtime bill at a time. That's no way to make important television like this. So here at year's end, you've had your money all year and enjoyed the interest on it. You get the maximum deduction. Please, would you help us? I don't have an offer on the show tonight. I'm not holding up a book or a tape or something on purpose. I want to impress you that we need the gift. We always are glad to give you our materials, but there goes some labor, there goes a stamp, there goes some handling, there goes the post office, and so on. If you just send a gift to us, we can use it immediately in the Lord's work without processing anything or going to any work. So I would appreciate if you would do that. And we, anyway, will send you our newsletter. You'll receive our catalogs. All that stuff is free of charge. You can see what we do have. You can order from there. Excuse my cold. I didn't want to make a show today, but I want to get it on the air to ask you this. We really need your help, and we don't make telethons here. We don't have tote boards. We don't have friends in every community to phone in large donations and so on. It's you. It's you we need. If everybody, I talked about the movies, and I did that earlier in the series, if everybody out there would send us the price of a movie, we would be in super condition. Could you do it just one time? Take an envelope or call that 800 number with your credit card and just give us a gift, even just the price of a movie, and we'll be in good shape. Remember Romans 10:15. How shall they preach except they be sent? And Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.